Hello, greetings from Virginia. I am your humble host, Sound Engraver. I hope everyone is doing well. I don't know who's here. In fact, I don't even know if I can be heard. I think I can be heard because my sound configuration looks pretty good. But it is I, Sound Engraver. I'm back for a couple of streams in the month of September. And I, of course, hope to continue doing live streaming weekly, starting in October. So, anyway, if you guys could just post anything in the chat, I see that there is one person watching. I don't even know if that's me, if that's my YouTube on the other tag, but hopefully people will kind of filter in as they come. Hopefully they have the notifications. But we'll just go ahead and get started. Actually, anyone in the chat, if anyone can say that I sound good, that you can hear me, that in fact I can even double check on YouTube. It's a different setup, it's a different room. I haven't done this in probably 7 or 8 weeks, so I'm a little rusty. So I actually, it does sound pretty good. In fact, it sounds like, yeah, Prof. Yes, Prof is in, and also Melissa Harrison and Sons is in as well. He says you're coming in loud and clear, so that's good. That's good. In some way, it does actually sound like my old place back in Raleigh, North Carolina. Yes, that's where I was. Nothing private about that, but now I'm in Virginia, and you can't really see it. You can see just a little corner of it, but I'm in this room where half of it is underground. I've got two walls that are, not really underground. It's not anything, subterranean, but it's got ground here and ground in the back, and this wall in front of me is all my foam, and then this wall right here is all my foam, and I ran out of foam. So the prof was kind enough to hang up a blanket, and we've got carpet here, so and we've got my bed over there, so hopefully it will absorb enough sound. There are things that are just kind of so far just situated until I get settled in. As you can see, let's see, move this way. You can see my my M audio speakers that I have not used in 4 years. So I'm going to get that set up. I'm going to actually have a workstation mailed to me this Thursday. I'm really excited. I've been waiting 4 or 5 years for this kind of workstation. It's only a couple $100, maybe $300, but I've just never had the money to get that, and I saved some money. I'm going to get a workstation for my music, for my speakers. You won't be able to see it. Maybe I can, take a picture of it and put it on the community tab or whatever they call it. Yeah, Daniel Heron is in too. The concrete walls are cool. Well, thank you, and actually painted by the lovely mother of Professor Geek. So she did a good job with that, and she kept the window a white trim. And then you see the cards behind me, the Star Wars card and the Mario card. That was from the prof. Star Wars was Valentine's Day, and Mario was my birthday back last March. So that's good. So where was I? Yeah, so it's a new sound setup and all of that good stuff. And this will be an impromptu. It'll be an impromptu, just talking about some stuff, some updates, and maybe some couple other topics. We'll just kind of hopefully wait for more people to come in. I have like 2 people watching. It's great. I mean, I don't do this weekly anymore, so it'll have to be caught on the replay. Well, thank you for watching the replay. But thank you, Daniel Heron, for stopping by, and Melissa Harrison, Jake, aka Melissa Harris and Sons 3.0. Wonderful to see you, and of course my prof. Hopefully Big Al will come in and all that good stuff. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and just talk about what's been happening this summer, and also some updates. So I did stream for one Monday. I think it was actually July 4 or the 4th of July weekend. I can't remember, but it was just one Monday that July. And then I spent July pretty much, I had one more month before the end of my lease, and then end of my lease in July. And I just spent the week, 2 weeks just cleaning and packing and getting stuff here bit by bit, little by little. And then I I had a whole month of teaching left before I actually ultimately moved to Virginia in September. So I had a month of teaching left. So I was currently I was in a temporary situation with some friends from church, and it was really great because I just finished a trip with the prof. End of July, I had a great weekend trip with the prof, and visited his family, and and then we get back, and we finish the rest of the moving. I mean, it was I had about 3 to 4 hours of work left after 2 weeks of moving and cleaning and organizing. I just wanted that apartment just, you know, beautiful and spotless. And I actually did get some reimbursement for that, which was great. I wasn't charged anything, so it was worth the work. But in any case, I was just done with 2 weeks of straight working, cleaning, and I didn't have any days off. I was still teaching. And so I come back that Monday night. Prof drops me off at my friend's house, and I'm tired. I'm finished with moving. I'm ready to stay in a temporary location, and it's a big, beautiful home that they have. Just a wonderful, gorgeous, huge home. 3 levels, and we're going through the front door, and my friends say, "Hey, guess what? We're moving." And so the following 2 weeks, after 2 weeks of moving and cleaning on my end, it was 2 weeks of cleaning and organizing beautiful home, and they were so kind to just open up the room, a room for me, and it had a kind of a bathroom suite. It was really just a nice room and bathroom suite. It was a very nice arrangement, but it was just more cleaning and more organizing. So for 2 weeks straight, I didn't do anything creative. The only time I played my violin was during, teaching, and I didn't do any composing. I didn't do any writing. It was just 2 weeks of work. So really, ultimately, my summer was a good 4 weeks of just working, just cleaning and organizing and moving and teaching. No creativity whatsoever. So you probably saw, if you guys follow my channel, you probably saw just a little bit of a lull in my videos. I usually post a sound experimentation or music video every Thursday, and then some commentary every Monday. And I kept the Monday commentary. It was okay, but it was just I just didn't have any time for my YouTube channel. But I'm back. I'm back for a couple of weeks, and the plan is that I will be traveling for about 2.5 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. So I'll be actually gone after a couple of the weeks. We'll just try to stay active on YouTube as much as I can. Um, and yeah, well, let me post this, and then I'll get back to my updates. Is Urkel getting along with Ernest? No, actually, I love Urkel. Well, thank you so much for buying that for my prof, or getting that for my prof. It's fine. He's a great character. Okay, so where was I? So traveling. So I'll be traveling probably for 2.5, 3 weeks, and visiting my sister who just had her baby. She had her baby on the professor's birthday. We were kind of hoping that was going to be the case, but we were not expecting it because the baby was actually 2.5 weeks overdue. Originally, my sister, without getting into too much of the details, it's, of course, it's family business, but she wanted a home birth. She wanted to have her first child in her home, and especially with all the regulations happening with public places, one could expect that it might not be so accommodating, with wearing a lot of, facial coverings and all that. And maybe that was just too much for her. But, one way or another, she really wanted to do a natural birth. But I think it was around Thursday of last week where, I don't know if this is policy or maybe it's state to state, maybe it's not federal, but I think I received a text where I think she passed the date. I think there was a date that exceeded or was, past the deadline for the midwife, meaning the it looked like on the text that the midwife couldn't legally operate after a certain time. So they went to the hospital, and I think they went to the hospital on the 3rd, and sure enough, they baby girl, beautiful, cute, precious girl. I'm not a baby person, actually, to be honest. I love kids. Don't get me wrong. I do love kids, but babies, like I've just never had that, like, feminine attraction. to babies like most women have. It's totally normal, and I understand why women have it. But when I saw the picture of my niece, yeah, she's cute. She's cute not just because she's my sister's child. She's just cute. And I won't say the whole name, but they revealed the baby name, and it is. I'll say the first two names. It is Tabitha Joy. So Joy is my middle name. My sister always loved my middle name, so it was kind of cool to have her first child have my middle name, Joy, and Tabitha, which actually is a name I wasn't expecting. They wanted to save the name because they really decided on the name, and they wanted to save the name, as a surprise until the child was, born. And, it was like, okay, Tabitha, okay. Like first thing that comes to mind is Samantha Stevens' daughter from Bewitched. Then I was looking at her, I was looking at this just chubby face. It's like chipmunk cheeks. She has chipmunk cheeks. And I was like, yeah, it's growing on me. It's actually a really pretty name. It's a very handsome name for a girl. So so Tabitha Joy, that is my niece. I am an aunt for the first time. Yeah, I'm in my mid-30s, and I haven't been an aunt before. I mean, my sister and I are the oldest of our siblings. So, but our other siblings are quite young. They're like 10 to 12 years younger than we are, so they're also really young. Um, they're at the age to have the family, but they're independent right now. So it is my first time being an aunt, and baby's cute. So I'm gonna hopefully pay the baby and my sister a visit in a couple weeks, depending on how she feels, how much she is recovering. So there is a bit of that news, and let me just grab a swig of water. Uh, some updates, some creative updates. As I announced back in July, I am off Bandcamp. I will be selling my music strictly, not strictly, like it's the only thing, but really almost exclusively from my website. Now you can get my music on Apple Music and iTunes and Amazon and all of that. But as far as getting pretty much 92 to 95% of the payment, I would just always lead people to my website. So in fact, actually, I probably should. It's Ryan Talker. Good to see you. Yes, I am back. I'm back this week. I'll be back next week. And then we'll see. I have some travel plans for the remaining month of September. So we'll see how that goes. But let me go ahead and drop a link to my website with just basic things on my website. It's there's still stuff to add, but I keep it updated with news and content and all of that. So my music's up there. So a couple of creative projects underway. I finally sent tracks of my space album, my ambient space album. My 4-track album is coming to you guys. It's 4 tracks of just kind of like a really it's not space ambient or ambient in the traditional sense. It's not cosmic. It's not the cosmic ambience, but it's got some of that feel. It's supposed to feel distant. It's supposed to feel kind of magical, kind of cosmic, but not in the traditional genre that is Sybient or ambient. But I just call it space ambient because it has that tone. Oh, Big Al Presents says, my YouTube didn't show this. Hello to you, sir. Good to see you. Maybe YouTube thought I gave up on it or something. But I'm back, YouTube. Can you just announce to all my friends that I am live? Yeah, actually, I don't even know how many people are watching. It looks like it's only 3. Yeah. So Sound Engraver's not really that popular tonight, and that's okay. So thank you guys, the 3 of you who are watching. Actually, I think I see more people in the chat than there are people watching. So anyway, but it's also 10 o'clock, and I know I usually stream around 9 or 9:30, but we'll see. So anyway, some updates on my ambient track. I'm in the process of getting back track number 3 of 4. So I'm almost 3/4 of the way done. We should probably wrap it up within the end of next week. I really would like to release my album. I meant to release it like back in April or May. So it will be released mid-month or so. And then I'm also currently working on a single track called Bradbury Lane. It's paying homage to the author, Ray Bradbury, and his science and speculative fiction and just who he is, what his imagination was. Um, back when he wrote. I mean, he just if you go I mean, even something like Wikipedia, if you just go see his well, musicians call it discography. I'm not sure what the literature people out there call it. But just the list of works. I mean, he started writing when he was, I think, 14 years old and started publishing, I think, when he was 14. Just so many short stories. So I'm going to be reading a little bit more Bradbury this October, and maybe even late this month. But I'm definitely writing a piece for him. Kind of it's an electronic piece that does have a lot of sci-fi elements in terms of sound. And oh, thank you, Prof. You say it's more than 3. YouTube is always a bit behind in the count for the streamer. Yeah, I'm on StreamYard and it says 3. Okay, now it says 4. So anyway, so actually the Prof got to listen to Bradbury Lane and or I say Bury, probably Bradbury. He seemed to enjoy it, and so it's a single track, but it's really involved. It's taking me a long time to develop this single track. So so there is that. Horizon Talker says Ishi has a She-Ra stream starting at 11. Going to be playing catch up a lot of stuff tonight. Yeah, that's good. I don't really know how long I'm going to be streaming today. It could be just an hour. It could be 90 minutes. It could be 3 hours. I don't know. It's just going to be pretty much impromptu. So Professor Geek says it was awesome. Thank you. Yes, I'm looking forward to releasing that, and I really do want to release Bradbury Lane in the month of October. So that's a bit of updates. So I've got my 4-piece album coming up, hopefully in the middle of this month, released to you the middle of the month. And then Bradbury Lane, I definitely want it released in October. And as far as content on YouTube, I still just have a lot to catch up on. Just, with settling and moving and trying to work out the just working out the composing and a little bit of teaching that I have. So just bear with me. I definitely want to I don't know what Big Al is saying. Was watching Heels. I've seen some stuff on that on Twitter. It looks safe enough, I guess. I don't know. I have no idea what it's about. So anyway, what was I going to say? Yeah, so just getting back into the routine. So we've got about 18 minutes in. So maybe just without further ado, unless you guys had any other things, I was going to say something about the content. Yeah, coming back from my travel. So if I do travel in the middle of the month, I'm kind of in this. By the way, I'm in this lower chair. I don't have my squeaky chair anymore. That ship sailed, unfortunately. So I feel a little low. I feel a little slouched, to be honest. But that's okay. That's okay. It's all going to be a little bit different. Going back to the YouTube content. So I'll be traveling and then coming back into. I'd really like to get back into SuperCollider. And not just SuperCollider with MIDI protocol. I've been doing those MIDI scores, where you could hear the drum kit and the bass and all that. And that's great. That's great. But I can't stop working in sound synthesis, granular synthesis and frequency modulation and all of that. So I really need to get back into sound synthesis. All right, so Big Al is posting stuff on my chat that I should not watch. Big Al, you know better than that. Well, then I don't want it. I don't want it on my chat. Okay, all righty. I trust you. I trust you. All right, so let's talk about we got the updates in order. If you guys had any questions, I did have a couple off the cuff, impromptu things to talk about. I actually didn't announce that I'd be streaming on the social media, so, I forgot to do that. Anyway, people can catch on the replay. Um, so let's talk about a couple of things. The first thing I actually really wanted to, talk about actually was my experience as a teacher. And so this will be more or less an impromptu on my experience, but, for you artists out there who just would think, maybe I could teach my specialty rather. um, you know, uh, maybe I could teach my specialty, in a public setting, whether that's tutoring or being part of a studio, like a music studio or a dance studio or some sort of art studio. I would say, in my experience, had I not moved to Virginia, I'd still be a teacher. So I've been teaching. It would have been 4 years this November for teaching, and it is teaching part time. But I averaged a little bit before the pandemic. I averaged 35 to 40 students a week. Now that does sound like a lot of people, and it is a lot of people. It's a lot of students, but that still is part time, not including commuting, not including prep work. I did a lot of different extra, things that I wasn't paid for, as a teacher. So I kind of wanted to fill you in, you artists out there who think, well, yeah, that would be a really good thing for me to work on my art on the side and make that a side hustle as I'm building my art business. I'm building my music business. Well, why don't I teach music while I'm building my music business? And I think that's a great way to go. So I'm just going to tell you my experience, tell you the pros and the cons and all of that. And we'll just go ahead and get started. So, yeah, so I taught in North Carolina for almost 4 years. It was gonna be 4 years this November, and I learned a lot about the teaching experience. Overall, I would say it is a pretty good vocation. Um, I think all things considered, it was what I needed to do at the time, and if push comes to shove and I need to start, of course, paying more bills and my debt, I gotta pay off my debt, and it's looking like, okay, I need an extra, side gig. Teaching at a studio would be the first thing to do because, I could teach violin. I really can. I really can teach violin like the back of my hand. I could teach violin in my sleep. It's a wonderful thing to teach, but there are things we need to know about teaching. And I'm not saying I'm by the way, I'm not saying teaching in the public school experience, public school like elementary school, high school, higher education like in college. I'm actually talking about just teaching in the city or in the small town. So there are definitely things to consider, um, if you do decide to go into teaching. Um, so as it was in the case with me, um, I pretty much taught at 3 different studios across Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, I just actually wanna bring it to the table right now. Let's say you're moving to a city, so you're looking for work, and let's say you are a musician and you see the city you're going to has, wow, 20 music studios. So the opportunities are there to teach and make some income. I will say, I'm just gonna say it straight up. If I do go into teaching at a studio again, it's gonna be 1 studio. If not my own private studio in my home, it's gonna be 1 studio, not more than 2. And if it were 2, they are not 30 miles away from each other. They are really, really close. A couple things that I just did not consider was like, wow, 3 studios want me. Well, that's gonna be more hours. That's gonna be more pay, obviously. Well, there were a lot of cons actually that came into uh, teaching at 3 different studios. The first obvious thing is the commute time. So I'm not really I never really mentioned my work schedule, but, back in North Carolina, I taught 6 days a week. I taught Monday through Saturday, and I never had a 2-day weekend unless it was a Monday like Labor Day. And I was 2 days in Raleigh, 2 days north of Raleigh, and 2 days south of Raleigh, and quite north of Raleigh and quite south of Raleigh. And there would just have been no way if to go from one studio to the next in a single day. The 2 studios north and south of Raleigh, they were about 25, 35 extra minutes of commute time, a whole ton of gas. A lot of gas because of, just not just mileage, but just the kind of highways I had to travel or the back roads, not even the back roads I had to travel. It was just like the city limits. It was just really congested. North Raleigh, I had to battle the soccer moms. Big trucks and the big vans and big families and stuff like that. South of Raleigh, I had to just travel very, very long distances on highways. In fact, it kinda I would if I would visit my dad in South Carolina, I would be taking the highway going to the the studios on the south side. It's like you almost feel like you're going on a road trip. That's how I felt like when I was teaching for a time in Durham, and it's a beautiful drive, but it's just way too long. And so that's the obvious con as far as teaching at 3 different music studios is that you're just split everywhere. And I did not miss a single time. There was not a day when I commuted to the wrong studio. I had it down. Okay, Monday and Friday, Tuesday and Wednesday, Thursday and Saturday. I had the studios down. And there was a couple times where I did teach at 2 studios in one day, and I would tell one owner, I said, "I can't do this. I just have to really, designate one day for this." So, if you're an artist, if you're a musician, and you're thinking about, teaching at a studio in the city, I really, really would, consider if you're on demand, guitar teachers, piano teachers, voice teachers, and violin teachers are always, at least in my case with North Carolina, always on demand, meaning you would be wanted. Your specialty would be wanted everywhere. So if you are on demand, you got to consider, well, hey, I can work 3 different locations, more hours. No, no, it's actually it would have been better for me to have one studio, have that be the concentration, and just commute there and collect the students as I go. It was very, very, very difficult. Now, a not so obvious thing, not so obvious, I would say, I don't wanna say problem, it wasn't really a problem, could have been a problem if I wasn't careful. The not so obvious issue with working at more than one studio in a city is the policies are different. The policies for billing was different. I got paid. It sounds pretty cool. Actually, it was kinda sweet. That was actually a good thing about working at, 3 different studios was I got paid frequently. Like, I mean, there'd be, like, little bits in here and there. One studio paid me only 1 time a month. One studio paid me twice a month, and then one studio let me invoice every week. So, that was pretty cool. Hey, Private Eye, nice to see you. Um Oh, good. Binging on, the your videos since your stream with the prof. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Nice to see you. Yeah, I've seen you in the chat. I've seen you, in the comments, of his video. So thank you. Thank you for coming. I feel like I've seen you in the chat on my stream before. Um, so anyway, where was I? So, the good thing about working at, multiple places in a week was I actually I did get paid frequently, even if it was just a little bit. I didn't get paid much, but I got paid frequently. But every studio had a different policy. Every studio had a different contract for the teacher and for the parent or the student if the student was an adult. Meaning I would have to know the rules for all of them because what was okay with one studio was not okay with another studio. And vice versa, something that was really not a good thing for one studio was, oh, this is just fine and dandy for another studio. So I had to be on my toes on what to expect. I actually got into trouble with a couple of my adult students because I would say, I ran into some awful trouble with a woman one time where basically we weren't keeping record of how many makeups she was. I basically owed her like 4 hours of lessons because the bookkeeping wasn't right. And for 2 other studios, that just would not have happened. And so it was just like, what would have saved me a lot of trouble with one studio, another studio was really lenient, and I actually got into trouble with some of my adult students. Hello, Owen Lister, it's good to see you. So artists, musicians, if you are thinking of working as a teacher, I would just it's much more beneficial to concentrate on one location, whether that's your own private studio or if it's someone else's studio, it's just one location. Spare yourself the commute time, the confusion on the policies. You've got one billing policy, you got one schedule policy, you got one makeup lessons policy. I mean, it's just, I would even rather have more rules imposed upon me from one studio than just all these different rules from 3 studios. So that was one thing I just didn't consider factoring in because I was just looking for work. I was like, yeah, I could teach at 3 to 4 locations. It's not great. One studio paid me for showing up at the recitals, which was great, and they were long recitals, so I'm glad I was paid. And then the 2 other studios, well, actually, one studio reimbursed us with a lot of food, like a lot of good food. So we weren't paid, but we were given food and coffee. And then another studio just wasn't paid at all, and so it's just it was. I'm not saying this as complaining, but I'm also saying this as just it was just a lot to take in. A lot of teachers that I knew, they were just in one studio, and I'm like, "You're so lucky." Now, obviously, another problem with working in 3 different studios was, uh, conflict of interest. Um, I there were students from one studio asking me, like, adult students, "Hey, oh, do you teach anywhere else?" And I'm like, "Well, um, I could say I teach somewhere else, but that's almost like a non-disclosure agreement. It's like I can't legally tell you under contract that I do teach. Like there would be some times where I would teach at a closer location. Now, 2 of those studios would have been fine for me to disclose that information, but that one studio that student asked me, nope, nope, couldn't disclose that information. Some parents wanted my contact information. One studio was no, 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 no. No parents can contact you, no students can contact you. I understand it's a legal thing. But then two of the studios, I could text the kids. It was really weird. It's just really strange. So anyway, I'm kind of on a roll now. I wasn't probably able to say this while I was working. So just keep that in mind. Now, another thing to keep in mind when you're looking into teaching art or music, it's different with just the setting. Again, this is not public education and this is not higher education. It's not the elementary school, it's not the college. This is just being in the studio or a city studio, not your own private studio. Um, it is more likely than not if you go to a music studio or a dance studio or an art studio to teach. If they hire you, yes, they hire you and they pay you. But as it was in the case with me, for all studios, they were technically and legally not my employer. I was a contractor. So what does that mean? Not much in the way of things, but you couldn't get things like benefits, and for me that actually wasn't really. I know that sounds bad, but like I'll need benefits now, in my new situation, but you just don't get benefits as a contractor with this kind of setting. And then also a little bit more important for me, actually, as a contractor, you don't have the option of having your taxes withheld because they're legally not your employer. Now, people might say, "Well, cool, you don't have your taxes withheld. That's great." Well, it looks great on the surface until you have to pay your estimated taxes 4 times a year. And there's nothing, and this is the first time, this was my first job where I just had to pay estimated taxes, not my, you know how you go on TurboTax or whatever on April, and people would ask me, I don't, this is, it's kind of private information, but people would say, hopefully I don't sound too boomy. Let me sit closer to the mic. People would ask me, "Hey, what are you doing with your tax return?" I'm like, "Well, first of all, why would you even assume I do have a tax return?" I don't have a tax return. Thank you very much. The only way I could possibly have a tax return is if I overpaid my estimated taxes. And believe you me, I paid probably the minimum every time. There was actually one year where it's like I didn't even know I had to pay estimated taxes, and that following year, I'm like, "Oh my goodness." April was a really hard month that year. So when you go as a contractor and if you go work for someone who's legally or technically not your employer, then you would have the obligation of paying estimated taxes every 3 months, and it is a whopper. It is easier, at least in my experience, as kind of the income base that I had, it is easier to have taxes withheld than to not have taxes withheld and then have to pay every 3 months. So there is that. So just kind of consider that going into the profession as well. Um, the average pay was pretty good. It's about half of what I would charge in a private studio. But there are pros to having the pay that I had as a teacher, and really the biggest pro, the biggest benefit of working for a studio is that there were people at the front desk. There were admins, there were people of administration where they would do all the scheduling, they would do all the recruiting of the students, they would do all the contacting of parents, they would do all that, real hard customer service stuff when a parent was not satisfied, or where people were being such troublemakers. They were on the front lines. I just walked in to the studio, to my room, I sat down and I started teaching. That's all I did. I never, took work home with me unless it was some activity that I wanted to, do for myself to bring to the students, the next time. So really that was a plus for me where um, it was just teaching. Now, that's not to say I wouldn't do my own studio. And when I say my own studio, I mean just me, no other instruments, maybe hire a piano accompanist or have a kind of collaboration with a piano teacher, if that. That would probably be the biggest thing I would do, closest to having my own, music studio in the city. I would never do it. People think, oh, you're picking up cues and tips and tricks, for when you want to start your own music studio. I'm like, well, I'll start my own private violin studio, but I'm not doing a music studio with all these different instruments and all these different teachers. It's just too much, especially with parents. There's this one studio I left, that was the last Thursday, and I'm looking at my paneling up there, and it's about to fall. um, and she said that they had, and this is after the pandemic, mind you. The business shot up. That people just wanted music lessons after the pandemic, which was awesome. They had over 600 students, 100, 100 plus on their wait list. And so, and I do need to get back into the chat. I know I'm just kind of talking. We'll get into the chat soon. I'm so out of practice. But over 100 people on the waiting list, and I'm just thinking, that just sounds like a nightmare. I couldn't be paid so much money to keep up with that. Which it was good for them, but, it just sounded like a nightmare. So, like, I probably would I'd have a private studio of, like, 10 to 15 students, and that's it. And I do a monthly contract, meaning they pay me by the month, and they don't have to they're not obligated to do 6 months with me or a year with me. I keep it pretty even, and I'm paid twice as much if it was just by myself. But, when I started the teaching thing in Little Rock, I taught privately for about and I was, like, for 4 people, I think, and, 2 of those people were just so they were so hard with me on schedules. Like, I would come home from work ready to teach a lesson, and no notice, there's like, "Oh, we can't make it." It's like, "Well, then you don't have a lesson." Now I'm actually a little bit stricter than that because you gotta honor the teacher's time. Gotta honor the student's time, you know? So, but as far as, like, monthly contract, yeah, pay me a month, and then we'll do 4 lessons, and then we're good to go. And I'm pretty flexible about rescheduling. But in any case, let's, see if there's anything on the chat. I don't see much chat moving. So, um let's see. What Owen says, is it just me or do you look much clearer? Maybe it's lighting or a different camera. It's well, couple things. It is new lighting, and we'll figure out what the lighting is looking like. It's just what I have right now. Um I might look clearer because of the lighting, but uh I've got bestowed to me, by my wonderful, excellent prof is an Ethernet cable that is running down this ceiling and hooking up to my computer. So I'm on Ethernet. That's awesome. It's gonna be so good for my lessons too. I actually am teaching. I think I'm teaching 5 students plus a couple private, private students that I've had. So I'm still teaching a few students. And it's gonna look great with lessons. But yeah, that's I think it might be if it's I'm using the same camera, I'm using the same, computer, but it probably is because of the Ethernet cable, which is kinda cool. Thanks for saying that, Owen. Um, alright, Private Eye says, "Wow, that is exactly what my dub teacher is always talking about." Is that a voiceover? He's a professional too, but man, getting work is hard for him. Actually, if you could clarify, I'd be interested in hearing what that's about. Yes, you'll be paid in exposure. I mean, food. Yeah, actually, and that those recitals were just all day things, and yeah, the food's good, but it's like if I had the choice to be paid for that day, because I would perform with a lot of my students, and I'd be with them and, get them calm before, being on the stage. And it's a lot of work, and I'd be on, in dress shoes the whole time, um, and by 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., you're just so tired, and there's not enough food in the coffee in the world that would help with that. So if I had the option of being paid and bring my own food, yeah, I'd choose that for sure. Owen says, since you and the prof live closer, does that mean you two will be collaborating more together on streams? I would say if we had some ideas, um, I do notice it could have been because it was a Saturday kind of different stream, but I think more people would be interested in just seeing him for his more topical things, like the archetype, like the mythos, and all that. But if we had something to talk about together, we would. I don't know if those get as much views, and that's fine too. Um, yes, I am. Sound is broadcasting across the ether. It's kind of nice. It's weird to see like there are no black lines on the Wi-Fi signal. It's pretty magical. Um, Dubbing, yeah, voiceover in Spanish for series and movies and stuff like that. Cool, cool. That's what I thought. That's what I thought you meant by that. That's cool. That is cool. Owen Lister says, Ether. I'll have to look into that if I decide to make a YouTube video. And now, as far as recording videos, you wouldn't need it, but for something like streaming, oh yeah, oh yeah. Because the streaming obviously is online. Private Eye says he is Venezuelan. Learned from the best academy or something. Went into voice acting. Left his country because of course, and now teaches me dubbing. Hearing him talk about music is very interesting. That's cool. And Prof says people would love more collaborations between us. I feel like we have a lot to talk about. I don't know if you guys got it toward the end of the birthday stream, but Prof wanted, and I wanted to as well, but we were gonna veg after that stream with some video games, and he wanted to kind of sit down to some video games, and I was just like, well, I want to keep I want to keep streaming because I haven't done it in a long time. So, and of course, I forget like these headphones are getting warm, and I'm wearing a warm shirt, and whatever. It's all right. It's all good. If we go for, I don't suppose we'll go for very long, because I do have just maybe one more thing to talk about, and if the chat is more or less not so active, then that's fine as well. But it's just a little bit more on teaching. Yeah, so teaching is pretty good, and I would say it's a vocation to pursue if you are the creative who continues to do your own art, and as you're building your business, if that's what you want to do, building your business, building your art business, building your music business, your writing business, it's just years in the making. It's just years in the making, and that's fine. That's kind of what makes it fun. But of course, you have to have an actual hustle, an actual gig to pay the bills. So teaching was a really good avenue for income on that. Now, so let's see, what else about teaching? Um, I really did like it. Something to expect, if you're becoming a teacher for the first time. Um, Something you might need to expect is retention, or having retention issues. So the first year of my 4 years, kid after kid after kid just quit, quit, quit. And for the first year, and I tell you, if this was for 4 years, I swear I was actually, before the pandemic, I was considering finding another job. I was consider bussing tables for like a cafe and an art museum. I'm like, yeah, I could be a server at a cafe and an art museum. That sounds fun. I was looking at those kind of jobs. Um, because after, it really was into 2 years. I'm just gonna vent a little bit. It was into 2 years of students not progressing, not practicing. Like, if you guys if like I get on you artists for practicing, it's because I was a teacher. I'm still a teacher, but not at the extent, obviously. Now, that can change. I don't know. But one of the most difficult things in the teaching profession, as a contractor, as a teacher teaching in the city, is students not practicing and ultimately quitting. Now, there are good reasons to quit. Some students had an interest elsewhere. I had one 8-year-old girl. She loved me and she loved the violin. It was obvious that she enjoyed violin, and she was a beginner. She was a total beginner, and she wasn't. She had potential. She was really bright, but I could see she wasn't going to stay for very long, and there was a really good reason for that. And that reason was she was into gymnastics. She would be in competitions in Charlotte, in North Carolina. And one time she told me, Miss Michelle, I really like violin, but I really want to concentrate on gymnastics. And I didn't discourage her from that. I really was encouraging her. I said, no, you're doing the right thing. You're homing in on one thing, and you want to be good at that one thing. And it doesn't hurt my feelings if it's not the violin, because gymnastics is your thing, violin is my thing. That's just what it is. So Um, that's that's a good reason to quit. Now, that doesn't make frequent quitting hard on the teacher. So my biggest struggle for the first 2 years was kid after kid quitting. They would they would have a trial lesson for 4 weeks and then quit. They would have, maybe 6 months, then play at a holiday recital and then just quit. And that gets very tiring to a teacher very quickly, and for one major reason. I did forget my computer also gets pretty hot. Uh, there's no ventilation here. I guess I could open the door. I probably should open the door. It might be the sound might be a little bit more boomy, but I think I might have to open the door 'cause it's getting a little warm in here. 1 second, guys, and then we'll talk about quitting. 1 second. Alright. So I have the door open, so hopefully that's not too boomy, and I had to change shirts. Anyway, yeah, I hear the sound now. That sounds like air. Anyway, so we were talking about quitting. So what made it really strenuous as a violin teacher? And actually, if you guys can tell me if the sound has changed for the worse, just let me know. But it feels pretty good here now. Sorry, I'm off the topic now. Let's get back to teaching. So one thing that just made it so strenuous about kid after kid and adults too quitting was because it gets very, very old to teach beginning violin and starting a person out on violin over and over and over again. I would imagine it's the same with guitar, definitely with guitar, as far as, left hand dexterity and arm and placement and all that. And I can imagine with piano too, but not so much with piano or something like voice. Because the violin, when you start on violin, it's essentially a block of wood on your shoulder. It's uncomfortable. I can imagine the 2 instruments or the 2 families of instruments that would be even more uncomfortable is something like a trumpet or a clarinet. That would be probably more uncomfortable than a violin. But when you just imagine if you were in my place, kid after kid, averaging 6 to 8 years old, sometimes 5 years old, and sometimes I had really bright 4 and 5-year-olds, sometimes I had not so bright 4 and 5-year-olds. Um, and you get them holding the violin, and then you get them, coordinating the fingers. You just it's very, very hard. Unless you're a part of culture like, Southeast Asian culture where they just have it like boot camp. Like they start the children at 2 years old, and then these 5-year-olds are just like in these concert halls already. It's a really Thank you, Owen. It's a really it's very hard getting kids with that kind of physical coordination. And not to mention, there are probably 7 or 8 factors alone that go into making a great violin sound. So when you have and I'm not gonna toot my own horn, but I know how to get a 7-year-old playing a very nice violin tone if they follow my instruction and if they practice for a week on those specific things. They don't get the cat sounds, like people think, because I know how to produce that good tone and teach it. But imagine 2 years, 2 years of kid after kid after kid after kid quitting and not getting better and quitting, or if it wasn't the kid that quit, it would be the kid that didn't quit but needed to quit because they were just never practicing or getting better. That's what you have to consider going into the teaching profession. Um, I always thought I wanted to be a teacher when I was a kid myself. I always thought I wanted to be a music school teacher and teach in the orchestra. And I remember getting the degree. I got my music education degree, and I that was a 5-year degree. I was a double major, and that was like a 4.5-year degree plus my other music major, which was also a 4.5-year degree. 4.5 years. And I got my degree. I got my music degree for music education, but I did not pursue 2 more months. I did not pursue 2 more months of teaching to get my teaching certification because I knew I didn't, at that point in my music education, I knew I did not want to become a music teacher. I remember having a conversation on the phone with my mom 10 years ago, and I said, Mom, I got my music education degree. Why don't I want to be a public school teacher anymore? And she said something insightful that I'll never forget. She said, You thought you wanted to be a teacher, and maybe you are going to be a teacher in some other way because you thought you wanted to be a teacher because you were always an exceptional student. You always wanted to learn. You always had that initiative. And that is something I never or rarely, I say rarely, like 2 of my students out of hundreds of students now that I've helped over the years, maybe 2 or 3 had initiative. So that lack of self-initiative is very, very hard for a person like me to see because yeah, I have self-initiative on practicing the violin. I still practice the violin. I took a break from composing and I got out my violin and I just played for like 35 minutes straight, just really difficult pieces, just to get that flow and that the juices flowing there. I have no problem with initiative. And for a person like me, and if you are an artist who has that high level, that magnitude, that level of initiative, you would come across students who are just there because their parents want them to be there. I've said this before too on my stream. There's this kind of stigma, not stigma. That's not the word I'm looking for. There's this kind of status. There's a level of uh, it's not aristocracy, but it's a kind of status that comes from that vein where, oh, my child is in music lessons. My child is learning the violin. My child is learning, classical guitar. That's not true. They're probably learning just chords. Nothing wrong with chords. Nothing wrong with a acoustic rhythmic guitar. But there is a little bit of a kind of uptick in the social status. It's always been there, and I don't know why. So kids would be there, and I would have kids every trial student. I would ask, "Oh, what made you want to learn the violin?" And it's so sad. My answer as a kid, I want to play. I want to be on the world. I want to tour the world. Oh, excuse me. I want to tour the world. I want to visit Russia and South America and Europe and I want to play Mendelssohn Violin Concerto in E minor. I want to be famous for that one concerto. That would have been my answer as a kid because that was me. That's actually why I practiced the violin because I thought I was going to tour the world and play Mendelssohn Violin Concerto. I can play the first movement. I need to dust it off though. I need a lot of practice and rehearsal time. But I know how to play the first movement. Um, that would have been my answer as a kid. The common answer was, I don't know. Well, what song have you heard that you liked that you would like to play on the violin? I don't know. Well, do you like the sound of the violin? And no joke, some kids didn't even know what the violin sounded like until I played for them. one girl, and I'm glad she quit. It was just she looked like she would have more joy going to the dentist, but she said this in front of her mom. I said, "What made you want to learn the violin?" And she said, "My mom." And you know what the mom's answer was is, "Well, I never learned the violin myself." So they would actually have their kid as the wish fulfillment of learning violin, and none of those kids, I had several of those kids, they were wish fulfillments. They didn't stick around, nor should they, you know? They should, just because the parents went to band class or whatever doesn't mean their kids need to be in music. They might be into sports, they might be into something else, the debate team. So, so that was a common thing where, uh, retention, the first 2 years of teaching for the 4 years, almost 4 years, was just, you know, seeing kid after kid, just dozens of kids in the span of 3 to 4 months just quit, and then taking new kids and only to see them quit, and then taking more kids and only to see them quit. And that is something to consider if you're teaching music or teaching art, that you kinda have to just bite the bullet. If you don't like that idea, but you wanna consider, pursuing teaching, you have to bite the bullet. Retention could be a problem for the first year or 2. It wasn't until after the 2nd year, and surprisingly, it wasn't until during the pandemic where I saw a handful of kids stay. And then by the 3rd, 4th, getting into the 4th year, I had kids that actually stayed. And that was nice. Once I had kids that actually stayed, and I had a man, before I moved here, it was like 2 weeks of very sad goodbyes. I had kids cry. Um, there was I was on a Zoom call with one kid, sweetest 9-year-old ever, like, she's so cute, and so analytical, very, very smart kid. Um, I I I I said goodbye to her, and I remember saying, "Bye," her name was Ramona. I said, "Bye, Ramona," and she waved, and right before we both hung up on Zoom, her face scrunched up like she was about to cry real hard. That was my last 2 weeks before moving here. It was really sad. But in a way, it was really heartwarming to know that people really wanted to stay. But it took 2.5 years. It took definitely the first year, and then the next year is like, it, so give it 2 years if that's something to consider, is the retention. Let's go ahead and take a break and look at the chat, and then, probably one more thing on creativity or teaching that has to do with creativity, and then we'll talk about something else. Elijah Brown is here. Blast it. My notification came late. Yeah, YouTube is weird about that. I understand, but welcome. I'm glad you're here now. All right. Owen Lister says, It'd be cool to see the prof talk about archetypes, maybe even the differences of good and bad cliches." Yeah, and I think I've noticed that there have been comments, in his videos, having topical suggestions. So it wouldn't hurt to leave like a suggestion. Oh, what about this? Just not anime. Horizon Talker says, "Oof, well, at least she can come back to violin once her gymnastics career is over in 6 years." That's some tough stuff. Like, I remember watching just a little bit of this year's Olympics, and how hard those 16-year-olds fall on their ankles, man. It's just like you hear the impact on their ankles and knees. It's like, I don't care how flexible you are and nimble you are. That's some hard that's hard on the joints, even for a young person. Owen Lister says, "Nothing wrong with working in a job that involves a bit of elbow grease. I have 2 part-time jobs that are now quite hands probably hands-on. I have free work time, and when I have free time, I work on my art." Actually, I did want to cover that just a little bit, Owen. So thanks for bringing that up. It's a little different, but not any worse. That means it's gonna be way worse to me. I'm gonna hear the difference. I'm like, "Oh, I hate hate that. But it feels a little bit better here. All right. Interesting. Private Eye says, "That's funny. That's exactly what my mom says, who is a lifelong teacher, always says, probably on retention and quitting and all that." Owen says, "I know I can never be a teacher. It takes a special kind of patience that I'm afraid I don't have." I will say, that there is a little bit, um you would have to give some lenience. You would have to give almost, dare I say, oh, this is bad. This is anti-teacher language. You'd have to give a little bit of apathy. You almost have to be slightly apathetic to stay sane with a lot of retention issues. Meaning, like, in the case of being a contractor for a studio, I really couldn't say, like, in so many words, I couldn't say, listen, I would actually be very clever in dissuading people, but I worked for a studio that had half the check, you know? So to even dissuade for a good beneficial reason would mean the studio would lose that student and lose that pay. I wanted to respect that, that's part of my contract. I'm not you don't say, "Ah, you should quit." If it were my private studio, I would be almost Russian school book strict. I'm actually pretty strict as a teacher. I do push my students. There's some times where I'm like, "Come on, get it going. You gotta keep doing it until you get it right." And I just, yeah, I was that kind of teacher. Um, I wasn't that kind of teacher though with the students I felt needed to quit, if that makes sense. I was hard on my students I knew could do it and I knew wanted to pursue it. I'd be strict that way. Now, if I had a handful of kids for my own private studio, I would say, "Listen, you need to find something else. You're in so many words, I'd be saying, "You're wasting my time, you're wasting your time. I don't want you spending more money on things that are not moving you forward." Because I believe in efficiency. Like, there were many times in the studios where I felt, I don't need the money. Yes, I actually do need the money, but, like, it was better. I would have rather had a free half hour of practice time or break time and no pay than to sit with a student that obviously needed to be doing something else. Like, they were in they I wanted to, if it were up to me, they're like, "Oh, I gotta find something they're engaged in," so they move on with that. Because that's part of the teacher in me too. It's like, well, maybe it's not violin, maybe it's guitar, maybe it's not music, maybe it's reading a book or writing or something like that. But I really actually had my hands tied with a lot of, you know I remember one girl, and I was just like, I looked at her parents just pleading because I couldn't say anything. I'm like, "Eh, she she needs to find something else," because some students hated being in the room with me. It's not really against me. They just didn't like being in the room for half hours. It was a half hour of torture being there. And so when it's torture for them, it's torture for me. So for something in that situation, you actually have to let yourself have even a little bit of lenience and, dare I say, apathy. I know that sounds bad, but it's actually the way you stay sane, because it's not that you sit on your hands and don't teach them anything, but you really have to bide the time. Like, okay, we're here for 30 minutes. I'm going to do the best I can with the 30 minutes. I know it's not going anywhere, but I'll do my best. So yeah. Um, but that was really the first year, the first 2 years. It got much better after that. I can't believe I'm ranting all about these things. Oops. No one's watching. Like, no one from the studios are watching. Um, Owen Lister says, "I used to learn guitar, but mostly for fun. Haven't picked it up since the pandemic. Clearly, I'm more of a drawer than a guitarist." I would say guitars would be pretty hard. I actually taught a student who was a teacher. He was a guitar teacher, and he was doing a lot of different things that he should not be doing on violin that actually makes sense for guitar. I was like, so he was teaching me like, whoa, it's a your thumb has to do this. No, your thumb has to stay still and slide up and down. Whereas guitar, the thumb has to be a little bit more versatile. And so yeah, I think it's versatile, not versatile. Anyway, Horizon Talker says, "Yeah, I played cello because my grandfather got me one. I put time into it and learned to love it, but at first, but it was just something. It was just something I had to do. That's wonderful. I just love that. Actually, I had a lot of those students come in too, where a relative like an aunt would buy them an instrument, or maybe give an instrument that they had in school. So that was pretty cool. Oh, it's Dr. Y. Yes, it's good to see you. Cool, wonderful. So I know people have a I guess Ishi has a stream, so I suspect people catch us on the replay. But actually, oh, and let's get back to your comment. Oh, let's see. This comment right here. Nothing wrong with working in a job that involves a bit of elbow grease. I have two part-time jobs that are quite hands-on, and I have free time. And when I have free time, I work on my art. So let's actually talk about this. This is something I did not know about myself as a teacher, and I think it's a really important thing. I think it's a really important thing. I I know that there are two kinds of teachers. So my experience as a teacher these 4 years, I've taught longer than 4 years, but in this kind of studio setting, there are two kinds of teachers. There's the teacher that is just so passionate about teaching. They teach for teaching's sake. It is their life. It is their all. And I love those teachers. I think that's I really do admire them. And then there are teachers like me who we teach for teaching, we're not teaching for teaching's sake. We're teaching them the topic at hand. We want them to get better. We want to see their progress, but it's it's I don't teach just for the sheer love of teaching. I want to see progress, and actually, to be honest, if I didn't have to make money, I would just be composing and practicing the violin myself and writing science fiction. If that question's like, well, if money wasn't an option, what would you do? I'd just be composing and writing science fiction and playing violin. I wouldn't be teaching. Teaching is my way of income, and I love it. I love that it is my way of income. But uh, there are some teachers. It's like it's the air they breathe, man. And I love those teachers. I think they're great, but they are few and far between. They do exist, and I met a number of them. I met a handful of them over at the different studios. Now, something I found. So getting to Owen's comment about. Having a job that is more hands-on with elbow grease. I think this is really, really important. Really important for artists to understand. That's a really good thing. I found this about myself as a teacher. I was just not creative as a teacher. They're the teachers that live and breathe teaching, that it's just their sunshine, it's just their joy. They would do all these sorts of extracurricular activities like, "You gotta try this app, you gotta try this game, you gotta try this book, you gotta try this worksheet, you gotta try this website, you gotta try this platform." And like that just like, you see the anxiety that it causes me. It's like I can't bring in materials. Now, I'm actually thinking of one teacher. She actually teaches kids with special needs, so she would actually need that avenue. But a lot of teachers looked up to her, saying, "Oh yeah, let's be resourceful here." Even people without students with special needs, let's take this, let's take that, let's do this, let's do that, let's try something new, let's do something different. I was so boring as a teacher. I'm like, "You're gonna work out of this method book, and then maybe I'll give you a solo piece." And I really tried to give them solo pieces and fun stuff to work on. But I gave them method books that I learned as a kid myself. I gave them the songs I learned myself. I and any other thing I wanted to know on my own, I would either ask my parents to buy the music for me, or I would find a copy, or I'd photocopy or Xerox, back in the 90s, you Xerox that music. I would find the stuff myself because I had that self initiative. the students had, bless them, like 97% of my students, they just did not have the initiative. They wouldn't look for stuff to look at for themselves. And so I was tasked to do it for them. Now, people might argue, well, you should do that anyway as a teacher. That's your responsibility. Well, number one, I wasn't paid for that. And it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work to accrue and compile different things that are free or things that would cost. Music does cost a lot of money. And so now there are obviously, with a teacher who had special needs students, she had these platforms she recommended were free, but it was just extra work for me. And I realized it's like, people I argued this myself and people would argue rightfully so, understandably so. Well, Michelle, you're creative. You compose, you write science fiction, you're an artist, you're creative. I'm creative in my own work. When it comes to teaching, I promise you, I had no drop of creativity, like none whatsoever. I just couldn't. And I think part of it was because students, I just know my students are sweet. My kids are sweet, or the kids I had were sweet, but I know they wouldn't receive it as anything. And maybe they would have, maybe I should give them that chance, but I kind of wish they would find it myself. And that was something I didn't know about myself. Like I wasn't that teacher, like I've got to find everything to get them interested. For me, it was like, you're interested or you're not. And if you're not, I'm not gonna, nudge you. I was one of those no nudge teachers. Like, listen, I will encourage you when you find it, but if you don't, I was so no nonsense, guys. I was like, no, like you're not interested, so I'm not gonna do unpaid work for you. And I know that sounds awful. I know that sounds just terrible. I would do the work if I saw the initiative, but I really rarely saw the initiative. And so I really had not a drop of creativity. So going back to Owen's comment, this is really important for artists, actually. The job that is the retail, the job that is custodial, the job where you're cleaning, where you're organizing, the office job, the bookkeeping job, maybe not bookkeeping, that actually sounds intense, but a job where you actually can much more easily channel your creativity, like cleaning, for instance. Like when I clean, I'm super creative when I clean. I daydream when I clean. It's not to say you slack off. No, you can clean, very, very well. You can organize very well and still be creative. I think those kinds of jobs are really, really, really important as an artist. Something even like server work or being a barista or hanging up clothes or shelving inventory. That's really, really important for an artist to have, because teaching, even though I didn't have creativity in that I was supplementing students with a lot of things that other teachers were, for their students, teaching took an incredible amount of cerebral processing. It's a lot because I would have students of different ages, different backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds. I would have students of different learning abilities. I would have students with learning disabilities. I would have students with social personalities. Whether deficiencies or something that's a little off. I would have just every student learns differently. I would have incredibly bright students. I would have incredibly slow students. Every student, after every 30 minutes, it was a different student with a very different palette. And that keeps you on your toes, especially when you're just starting with them. But even when you're with them for several months, you have to gauge. You have to gauge a very specific need or several, like a list of specific needs for one person, and then times that by 40, 6 days a week. Yeah, that took a lot of creativity. And then I would go home and I would compose and stuff like that. So it was a different kind of creativity, but I couldn't be so creative in my teaching because then I wouldn't have any energy to be creative in my actual, composing. All right. Yeah, I mean, Russian schoolbook is kind of like it's kind of a stereotype, but like the Russian teacher, like or the Slavic teacher, no nonsense. Like you do it or you get out. Thank you, Elijah Brown. Yes, I do go by MJ, SE or MJ. Yeah, I'm pretty honest. Probably shouldn't be too honest though, right? um. Oh yeah. Yeah, actually, violinists slide their thumb, and I think cellists would be different because it's vertical and it's wider as far as the fingerboard. So when I say guitarists are more versatile with their thumb, it's kind of hard to explain without the fingerboard. But the violin, if you'd see my thumb here, this doesn't move really. I mean, yeah, it moves like if I'm doing different things like this, but it shifts with the finger. I don't have a swivel chair, so I can't show you like the back. Okay, well, yeah, you can see it. So my thumb when I'm uh, shifting position, it's pretty much staying where my first finger is until I reach really high, and then I stretch. But a guitar, even during the span of the neck of the fingerboard, the guitar, I don't know exactly what it does, but it does a lot more things than just kind of slide. So it does crazy like twists and turns and stuff like that. I was like, wow, if I ever thought of playing guitar, as a self enrichment thing, I don't think I could. I don't think I could do that because he had to unlearn a couple things on guitar. I mean, not for his guitar, but he had to change his mindset on a few factors. And I could see his frustration. And guitars are tuned differently. They're tuned in fourths. Violins and well, all the orchestral strings are tuned in uh, fifths. It's getting late. I kind of want to talk about one more thing if you guys are open to a little bit of a longer live stream. Thanks guys for letting me talk about teaching. I didn't think I would go that much. Was totally impromptu, but it was kind of fun. It was a lot to get off my chest. Elijah Brown says, I like the no nonsense style. No nonsense style. I think coddling is bad. Yeah, I had my share of parents who had no problem with me disciplining their kid, but it's really weird to discipline a child in front of their parents, let alone there'd be some times where it was me and the parents or one parent, and then sometimes the parents would wanna, like, butt in, and then I would gauge the discipline because I don't want 2 adults disciplining a 7-year-old kid. That's just too much socially. That's just too much for a kid. Um, but if I was by myself, and they needed discipline, then yeah. I would say I was never disciplinary, like I would punish them, but I was very forward. I would say, "Listen, you need to get this right." I had this one girl, she loved me, and I don't know why. She loved me, and her family loved me, but I was so strict with her because she, bless her little heart, the slowest learning ever, and there was never any notes. The parents never sent us any notes, like, if she had a learning disability. Maybe they weren't aware of it or they didn't want to admit it. She just learned so slowly, and she was really dedicated. Oh, looks like let's see. Yeah. She was really dedicated and practiced, and I'm like, "How do you practice every day and not get better?" I tried to teach her different ways to practice. And that's an important thing to teach as a teacher is how to practice. That's actually something I think I lacked it too as a teacher. So I lacked creativity as a teacher, just because I had the initiative on my own to do stuff. So I was sort of expecting that of my students. Um, What was the thing I just lacked? Oh, how to practice. I felt like I should have been better about that. Yeah, Horizon Talker is absolutely right. If you can't be creative full time, having a job with no creative element to it lets you flex that part of your mind while doing other things. It's absolutely true. My last job was a receptionist job, and that job it was a 9 hour job. It was a 9 hour it was a 40-hour job. It was a full time job, but it really could have been part time. I would get things done, like, by lunch, and I would try to find things to do. It was really sad too because the project managers were just running with their heads on fire. So, toward the end of my stint there or my time there, they would give me small project manager jobs, like real small jobs to write out and send not send to the customer, but to give back to the supervisor. I even actually before I had pursued music, I got offered a project manager job, and I'd have been making way more than I made as a teacher, but it was not worth it. Not worth it. I'm not project management material at all. I don't know. I'm kind of no nonsense with teaching. Maybe I would be no nonsense with customers that had like millions in assets. All right. So yeah, I think we could talk a little bit. I mean, if you guys, yeah, I mean, it's my stream. Maybe I could. There was another topic I wanted to talk about as well. But I think what I'll do, if you guys don't mind, I might just take a quick 5 minute break. I don't expect it to go beyond midnight. I do also plan on streaming a little bit earlier, but I just want to do it at 10, just to make sure if I've got the feelers right. Um, but yeah, let me. I don't know. I should. Oh wait, I don't want YouTube. I want my website. I think what I'll do is I'll put on some of my music and go ahead and share. Excuse me. Share tab audio. All right, that looks good. That's my music. Well, that's my website. Let's go ahead and see if let me know if you guys can hear this. I'll put on sidetracked. Ooh, that's gonna be loud. Oh, that's loud for me. Can you guys hear that all right? I'm not gonna leave until I get a word. I actually do need to grab some more water too. Come on, guys. Help me out. Do you hear it? Maybe StreamYard is a little. I love this track, Sidetracked, and it's my least popular track. Come on, guys. I need help. I'll just hang out until I get a word. Can you guys hear the music? Nothing. Thank you, Owen. Oh, you know what? I bet. Yeah. I'll just go ahead and stop the share. I love that track, but I'll stop it. Um, the share audio actually was checked, but I actually that could be a sound configuration thing from the moving. So I'll double check on that next time. Well, yeah, I can hang out. I might be low on water, so we'll see. It might be like a quiet break if that's okay. But thanks for hanging out. Yeah, so I might talk about one more thing or not. I don't know. Owen Lister says, my goal is to discipline myself more with my art. I have a problem not finishing what I start, even with books, so I need to work on that. Yeah, that's the best thing you can do. That's the best thing you can do for uh, being prolific with your creativity and with your art. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about one more thing, but if you guys don't mind, I wish I had music to play it, but um, I would just say go ahead and talk amongst yourselves, and I will be right back. I'll fix the music maybe another time. So 1 second. All right. Thank you guys so much for waiting. Hopefully you can hear me all right. It looks like Elijah says, I keep getting thrown out of your stream on my TV. This has never happened with any stream before. Plus, I can't hear you. You can't hear me? Okay, let's check audio. Can you guys hear me at least? I should actually have my audio good, but I can double check. All right. So guys, can you hear me speak at least? Actually, I can also check YouTube, see if that works. Oh, good. I can hear myself on YouTube, and then I exited YouTube. All right. Yeah, good guys. I'm just I'm just getting into the into the swing of things because I'm not used to streaming and I'm in a new place. But I'm happy to do it. I really do like streaming a lot. All right. Someone was kind enough to leave me a down vote because they didn't appreciate me live again. Actually, I have been saying rather controversial stuff anyway, so it's fine. Actually, that's probably a good sign because I'm actually getting a lot more subscriber count as well. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Dr. Y, it's good to see you again. And Avelos, nice to see you as well. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is the door's open. Let's actually 1 second here. I'm just gonna close the door. Thank you guys for your patience. 1 second. All right. Okay, so I want to kind of hear the difference between the door closed and the door open. So one more swig. That's okay, Elijah. It used to hurt my feelings, but I think it's just because I think it's a good sign, actually, to be honest. I kind of like rustling up some feathers, but I see videos. It's like there's like nothing offensive. In fact, this is really engaging and really enlightening or really relaxing or really beautiful. And it's like it's got like 16,000 likes and then like 300 dislikes. So it's bound to happen. So, ha, no, I wasn't, Owen. Downvote. Were you discussing Siege of Mandalore before I got here? No, I wasn't. Yeah, Scooby Doo is coming up. I'm excited about that. For Halloween, I'm gonna be playing Scooby Doo Super Nintendo. Oh, awesome! All right. So yeah, the last thing I want to talk about is standards. Really, that's the topic for tonight, or the last topic for tonight. Um, I'd like to talk about standards and you know, I'm running the risk of sounding like Tony Robbins. You gotta raise your standards. I was on an entrepreneurial kick for like 2.5 years. I never really listened to Tony Robbins, but I would listen to commentary and the influencers who would also quote from him or have videos of him. And if that guy is mocked, that's fine. But yeah, Tony Robbins, you gotta raise your standards. Now I know that sounds boring and stupid and basic, but it's the truth. So I had to get that out. I do want to talk about standards. I really do want to talk about really raising standards. Um, as an individual, I would say as an individual is the place to start, and then I think raising our standards or at least upholding good standards really is culturally beneficial to our society. Um, the first thing I want to talk about with raising your standards, or at least I hate saying that. I don't want to sound like Tony Robbins. I want to talk about just upholding good standards. The first thing I would say that allows you to uphold good standards is self-respect. I want to talk about self-respect. And I want to talk about it with the scenario that we had seen over this last summer with the production of Masters of the Universe Revelation. I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to get into the story or what people are talking about, what they're what they're saying about it. I have sort of kept up with like the Twitter hashtag, and it's people can't they can't keep their face. They can't save their face. uh you know that was a blow. That show really, uh no matter how much the people behind the production are pushing the positivity, no matter how much the toy lines are pushing out the positivity, it's just it 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 couldn't have been more transparent on how insulting it was. And I want to talk specifically about the treatment of of fans here. I want to talk about fans needing to have a little self-respect. This has to do with Kevin Smith. I'm not angry at the guy. I actually do feel sorry for the guy, but he is one of many who demonstrates psychotic behavior. Now, we won't get into the details of just the misbehavior, but Kevin Smith is the first time I saw this among the franchises. You guys might have seen it with other franchises, but he's the first one I've noticed who has he's directly lied to the audience. He's directly said, "This is so," and it was not so. He's directly said, "No, it's not about this," when it was all about this, concerning Tila being the main protagonist. And he would fight hard against it, when there was speculation, and he would just really insult people. Now, it is one we've seen people be insulted. We've seen the audience be insulted. We've seen the fans be insulted. In the case with Star Wars and the Last Jedi and all of that. But, I mean, even with Ryan Johnson, I don't think he directly lied to people. Um, I could be wrong 'cause I didn't see any of the behind the scenes, I didn't see any of the hype before The Last Jedi. I just I understood, Ryan Johnson to say, "This is something no one is expecting," and guess what? He was right about that. That is true. But in the case with Kevin Smith, he flat out lied to the audience, and people still watched him. Now, I wanna make the comparison. It's like, you know, it's like getting a car. It's getting a make and model you've been wanting for a few years now. In the case with He-Man, fans of He-Man would have wanted to see a new, not refashioning, but just a new look to He-Man, and with new animation. Yeah, we actually did get enough with the other iterations, or yeah, other iterations of He-Man, in the early 2000s. But it's like wanting a car for a few years, and wanting a certain make and model. And then you've got this salesman, or you've got this car lot you're just not sure of, but it's like the only lot. It's the only salesman that can give you this car this certain time, and you can't get it anywhere else. You can't get it anytime else. And you just feel really wrong about this guy. You just like, oh, I think you're mishandling this. I think you're mistreating me as a potential customer. I don't think what you're saying is true. I don't know much about cars, but I just don't think what you're saying about this car is true. But I really want this car. Okay, I'm gonna buy this car. Now people could say, "Well, sound engraver, that's a little different," Obviously, if you get a car and you've been lied to, and you've been lied to, well, that's a huge difference because you're paying for this. It's also much more dangerous to have a car that's unsafe on the road, and you're not sure. But it kind of looks the same to me when fans are like, "Wow, we've been lied to," and this is before the first episode aired. We've been lied to. Okay, let's watch it. It's not dangerous to watch it. It's not gonna physically harm people if something goes wrong on the road, but it's the same way where it's like, that people know. Like, people who watched people I respect too, the channels I follow, where I'm like, "Man, I know you're a geek, you have this specialty, but you're a geek here and you love Masters of the Universe," and there are a couple people that I have massive respect for on their YouTube channels, and they know flat out, it's like, you knew you were lied to and you watched the show." And that's what I wanna talk about with standards is have self-respect, guys. Now, I know none of you are watching it or whatever, but have the self-respect. I can't even make this argument for Ryan Johnson because I don't think he directly lied, but knowing that you've been lied to and you take the product anyway. Like, you're hoping for the best. Like, people hoping for the best, knowing they've been directly lied to. I wanna say we need a better standard. We need that better standard of self-respect. And I think, I think that would be really good for our culture and for our society to have self-respect. Now, in the way of cultural issues and political issues, I think people need to have self-respect when it comes to having decency and decorum on things like social media. And and the growing movements that are telling people, "Well, this group of people's bad, this group of people's evil, this group of people's wrong," and people being guilted into thinking, "This is who I am, I should be ashamed of myself." You need to have self-respect and say, "No, I'm not gonna take the abuse. I'm not gonna take the abuse. You can call me whatever you want, but it's wrong, and I'm not gonna be shamed. I'm not gonna be guilty." Because if I am decent, if I move every day, if I work and act every day and speak with all decency and all decorum and all respect, I can at least have some self-respect where you do not treat me like that. So it's I'm seeing this kind of parallel where people are kind of like, recoiling and like, oh, hiding and like, oh, I hope they don't call me this, or I hope they don't think of me in this way. Oh my gosh, they said this about me. It's like, well, is it true? Well, no, it's not true, but they said this about me. It's like, don't, fight it. Have the dignity and the self-respect. When I was a 90s kid, we taught to be respectful and we taught to have to be people of self-respect. And it's not narcissism. I'm not talking about, be self-absorbed. No. Have the dignity to say, you mistreated me there. You belittled me here. I'm not gonna put up with that. I remember having that in the workforce when I was belittled just because I, I know, guys, it's kind of hard to imagine, but sometimes, like especially when you're young, I'm not I'm in my 30s now. I'm relatively young, but when I was in my like 18, 19, early 20s, it's kind of true. But because I had blonde hair and blue eyes, I was seen as a bit of a ditz. And there was this one girl, and she had kind of she had this kind of comedic knack. She knew how to be funny, she knew how to tell stories, she was kind of intelligent. But there's one time she was belittling me, and I snapped my fingers like, "You do not talk to me like that." And she stopped. She like I just you just had to say that, You just had to protect yourself, and you had to, you had to protect your mind and say, "No, I'm not gonna be treated like this. I'm not gonna be bullied like this." And I think fans need to see this in not just in the way of Masters in the Universe Revelation, because if Kevin's the first one, he's not gonna be the only one. If Kevin Smith is the first one, he's not going to be the only one. I would say prepare to see a new trend with the franchises. Prepare to be lied to. Prepare to be given at the very least misinformation. Prepare to see any speculation contended with and viciously contended with, saying these guys are in the wrong camp. They need to be punished. We saw that with some of the channels. regarding Masters in the Universe. But I don't think Kevin Smith, I don't think it's just gonna end it with Kevin Smith. I even saw, this might be completely, uh, separate, but I remember, seeing, I think it was like a video of Thor Skywalker's on, oh, what show was it? Oh, I think it was the Book of Boba Fett, where the producer, the writer of the, I think he's the writer of the Book of Boba Fett, he said, "Prepare to have your mind blown." Cool. That's fine. First of all, I would not put that behind my product. Like, if I publish my science fiction out there, I'm not gonna say, "Prepare to have your mind blown." If your mind is blown, that's awesome, but I'm not gonna, like, front up the release of my science fiction book and say, "You're gonna be amazed." You might not be, you might be. That's cool. It's gonna be whatever you see it as. Um, and I almost got, like, a little red flag from that. Maybe it's totally innocent, maybe it's totally innocuous, but it's like, why are you setting this kind of look, this kind of reputation of a show that's not been watched? There has obviously, one could argue, there's been immediate success, not immediate, but there has been some success with, well, not some. There's been great success with a show like The Mandalorian. There's been pretty good success with The Bad Batch. So people are already, behind the stages and behind the writing and the production of these new Star Wars shows. Now you're seeing writers say, you got to prepare to have your mind blown. It's like, it's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be the best thing you ever saw. Ryan Johnson said that, guys. Now, I'm not saying, the Book of Boba Fett's gonna be anything like The Last Jedi, but it's these people behind the product or the project saying this. And if there's gonna be speculation, or you know what? If there's gonna be objective criticism, they will be attacked. Anybody, who's gonna be objective in their criticism will be attacked because it's already been set up as the most amazing thing ever. It's definitely not, the same tier as Kevin Smith with his lying, his outright lying, but it's like the same level of cockiness. It's like, it's it's a little psychotic, or a little bit of a sociopath. I would dare say it's a little bit on the, uh, thinking of a sociopath, because they're directing the reality of how you should think. You don't tell me how to think, okay? If I'm gonna be amazed, I'm gonna be amazed, but not because you said it, but because it is amazing. Just, if you have an amazing product, just send it out and let the people enjoy it. As an independent artist, I find time and time again, I've said this before a lot of times, um, I find it time and time again where, uh, my favorite tracks are not the ones that are most received, and the tracks that I feel like need the most improvement are the ones that are liked the most. They're the most beloved. I find that amazing. It's like, "No, you need to like this track, you need to like this single, you need to like this part of the album, not that part. Why is that the most popular track? I don't even like the intro of that." Thinking of one track in particular, it's like, "Why is that the one that's the most popular on Spotify?" I can't control what my audience likes, or better yet, I can't control what my audience likes the best. And I think I hear like an animal behind my window. So that's what I wanted to say. I just wanted to, there's an animal right next to right next to me. I hear it. Maybe it's someone upstairs. I'm getting used to my environment. Um, that's what I wanted to say, is have the self-respect to have your attention on things and people that don't insult you or don't set you up for disappointment. You know, it's very manipulative now of directors and writers and producers to say, "You're gonna think this." No, no, I wouldn't even ask that of my own audience. It's like, I think this of my stories, I think this of my music, but there's no way I can control, there's no way I would put that on my audience. So, self-respect in the way that y if you've been lied to, if you've been mistreated, then don't give it the time and attention. That's my point. Yes, I'm giving this time and attention to belabor this point. So, fans of any franchises, anyone in the chat, you guys, if you have any stories that you love or franchises that you love, but you've seen not only the mistreatment of characters or stories, but you've also seen the mistreatment of of the audience. There's something outside. Then yeah, just don't give it the time. And and part of that challenge is I'm seeing too, is I've started just to say no to certain YouTube channels that I just like, if it's someone's cup of tea in the way of entertainment, then that's fine. But it's just not my entertainment anymore. It's just not my entertainment. So if you're lied to, don't give it the time and attention. Have a little bit of self-respect. Yeah, I think so. Prof says it's probably just a rabbit or something in the window well. I think it's a rabbit. That'd be sweet. Oh, maybe it's a toad. I saw some toads on the walkway out there too. So Dr. Y says, you heard something at your window? Oh, I watched too many ghost videos lately. I ain't watching any horror. There's no ghost stories, no horror. So anyway, so that's one thing of self-respect. If I may repeat myself, that is one thing of self-respect in that you do not give your time or attention to people who blatantly mistreat you. The second thing of upholding standards, in the way of self-respect, is being decent online, is being decent in your exchange. I do see, I've seen this really with, especially starting all the way back in January, where, of course, we had our previous president, our former president, kicked out of the social platforms, i.e., Twitter. And actually, I do like Twitter. Sorry. I know that's like, what? The mistreatment of our former president, and you're still on Twitter? I do Twitter right, man. I know how to do Twitter. so I'm going to keep doing Twitter until I find it to be, not useful at all. But, I explored other alternatives, to Twitter. And Horizon Talker, I think you were talking this. We have mentioned this before. I've mentioned this on my stream, and I think you brought this up too in the comments section, where with things like Minds, for instance, I'm posting my videos on Minds. I'm reminding some artists, in their work, but still, even 8 or 9 months after this whole kerfuffle, uh, it's all about we got to be against censorship. I'm like, yeah, we got to be against censorship, but like, stop looking like an extremist. Like, I'm against censorship, but I don't write in the way of extremities. I don't write like an extremist. Don't fight fire with fire. Why? Because not only does it not quench the fire, it doesn't quench the flames, it actually creates a bigger fire. Meaning you can be for something or you can be against something, but don't conduct yourself in a way where it's all negative, or it's all slandering, or it's all insulting, or it's all complaining, or it's all, we've got to fight this to the death. It's like, I just want a normal social online experience. Now that's just me. But my issue with Minds is that it posts things that are really extreme looking. It's like, I don't really need to see this. I'm not interested in seeing this. I just want Minds to be like Twitter, where I see some artists post some stuff, and it's not. It's like they're not letting this go. It's like, we got to fight this to the death, and it's like, maybe this isn't for me. Now, I'm not speaking against people who actually have been deplatformed and can no longer access things that I can access. I have the privilege of accessing because I'm not controversial. At least I hope I'm not. um, so people who really don't have anywhere to go, they have those options. So I'm glad that they're really thriving in those options. Um, but in the way of standards and specifically self-respect is I really want to vouch for decorum. I really want to vouch for decency. Um, I know like different parties is like, well, this party's playing it this way and playing it this by the rules, so we got to do it too. Sometimes that's effective. I'm not arguing against that. But it's kind of like just because you have the right doesn't mean it is right. That is from Granomir from He-Man, the dragon from He-Man. He's like, "It is my right, but it isn't right." He said it better. He said, "It may be my right, but that doesn't mean it is right." Meaning, you may have the right to freedom of speech, but don't be an imbecile, Don't be hurtful to people even if you have the freedom to be hurtful. I'm not talking about actually inducing and provoking actual harm in the setting, like, don't scream fire, of course. But it's like, oh, yeah, I have the freedom to be an imbecile, but why would you want to? It's like, well, we gotta stick it to them. It's like, I don't want to be a stick in the mud. I actually want to be a professional and live decently. So that's what I would say is I would say, at least from my part, is to encourage, the community to raise our standards, to speak with decorum, to speak with decency, to speak with good sound arguments and to fight, if you feel like there is something that is precious that is being under attack, yes, we have to fight and we have to uphold the virtuous. We have to uphold the good, the noble, good, true, and the beautiful, and the noble, and do it well. Speak it well because there are some very admirable speakers out there, and it's like, wow, you really admire them. So that is that in the way of standards. So I think that's all I have to say, unless I think of something else, and it's close to midnight. I'm not used to streaming. We're almost at the 2-hour mark, and I'm feeling a little. The stream high is winding down. So, all right. Yay, thank you for engaging, chat. It's good. This is my favorite part of the stream, is I like talking, of course, but I also like what you guys are saying. Lige Brown says, I feel like we live in a time of pretty low standards. I would agree. I definitely would agree. And I would say just, pick one thing, one thing that you would do or encourage people to do. So my encouragement is getting on YouTube and telling people, guys, you've been lied to. Do you really want to reward him? Owen Lister says, my Halloween plan is to watch at least more horror movies. I'm not a huge fan of horror, but I like to know that genre, it does have an important place in storytelling in general. I mean, I understand the importance of horror. Actually, I'm not as well versed, of course, as Fan Man. Well, I'm certainly not well versed in his literature and his list of film. I don't need the visceral. I don't need the visceral, and I think it's because I'm a Christian. There's the theme of horror that you have to believe, or I'm not quite sure, but I know there are very, very important themes, and I actually do. I'm not against working with some horror elements in science fiction or speculative fiction. Um, But it wouldn't be the visceral horror, like, kind of the haunted house and orphan child ghost or whatever like that. I never needed that. I just never needed that animal fight or flight response to a thing like a movie. And I don't mind watching really tense things, but not in the not in the style of horror. Dr. Y says, raising your standard, in military terms, that means something totally different. The standard was the national banner or the flag of war. Oh, yeah. I thought you meant something different at first, but now I know what you mean. Owen says, even low budget B movies have some high standards because I've seen some low budget movies that were actually pretty good and others that were bad even by B movie standards. That's it. That could be an interesting point. I don't know. I've only played Super Nintendo. Video game companies have been lying to fans for years. People still buy them. I just can't. I just can't. And I'm not afraid of missing out. Actually, um that's actually something I know the professor can do on his own, but I wouldn't mind doing a video with him on why people are addicted to continuing to purchase and to consume. Um, if you want a bit of a teaser, David Stewart had a recent video on why people are addicted to the World of Warcraft, and it makes total sense. And he applies everything is applied to specifically that MMO, but I'm like, man, actually, but it actually does apply to what people are feeling with their fandoms and their beloved franchises as well. I think that's the snake oil salesman feel. You do feel like Kevin Smith is a shill. I don't really call people by those terms. One is I don't really know the whole story of it, but at the same time, I just I don't want to. Even if it is true, it's not like I want to insult people, but I think people had picked that up where he pretends like he's one of us and became successful in Hollywood. And I just think the um, lack of authenticity there, like the real insincerity there, where people say, "Well, I am this person," and you're clearly not this person. It's like I'm one of the fans. Well, based on the new product, no, you're not. I'm just an average everyday man. It's like you are not. You're not. It's like you know to the elitists out there, just be elitists. Just own it. Don't try to pretend you're one of us. It's okay. Like you can be humble. That's the thing. It's actually people of very prominent positions. They can be humble. They can be admirable. They can be humble. I mean, looking at figures like Martin Luther King Jr. He was a really prominent man, but he was also humble. You could be very prominent. You could be very wealthy, and you can be humble, and we would like you. But there is that I am for the people, and that's not the case. It's like I'm for the downtrodden. It's like you couldn't be on a higher tier in society. And I think that's where people pick that up immediately. And yeah, and I would say that Smith might be one of those people. Oh, Avelos, I don't know anything about FL Studio. Yeah, post a next video on a tutorial. Uh, I would say, I mean, if I may, what I like to encourage is people actually. Well, that's an interesting thing to see. Well, why don't I do it myself? I actually I have not even touched FL Studio. I've never done it. So I mean, I guess I could pick it up, but I mean, of course, my channel's really on SuperCollider and Logic Pro with my music videos and my sound experimentation videos. Yeah, I've never done FL. I I know it's pretty accommodating and the interface is smooth. And I know oh, what's his name? I just subscribed to him. He's a teacher I actually taught. He has he does video game covers. Maybe I'll try to find him real quick. Avelos. I don't know if he does. Maybe down the road he might do FL Studios, but I know he does work in FL. Yeah, my two software that I do our SuperCollider and Logic Pro. I need to get back into SuperCollider. That's going to be I need to get back into granular synthesis and sound synthesis in general so badly. It's just really, really important. So this guy, Staticaster, he's a teacher I taught. He does guitar. And then he does cover video game covers with FL Studio. I think that's the case. So yeah, sorry, I can't do a tutorial because I don't know how to do it. But yeah. All right. I don't expect to go beyond 2.5 hours if that's okay with you guys. Because I gotta up the stamina. What makes the Masters of the Universe Revelations debacle so frustrating is the fact that it looked almost like the new 80s show. With better animation, a better animation budget, but all the lies and manipulation just ruined it. It's more than that. I think the biggest problem was the lying and the manipulation, but it's not even the essence of what was before. And it was said to be first. It was said to be the sequel of the '80s show, which I want to have believed it to begin with. But then they softened it to be the spiritual successor, and that's just well, it was an inversion. It was a complete switch of what essentially was Eternia. Just say what it is. What's wrong with the producers saying exactly what to expect? What is wrong with that? And people who were defending Kevin Smith left and right, they were saying, "Why are these people spoiling it? Like these people need to be shut down because they're spoiling it." It's like spoiling it? Spoiling the idea that Tila is the main protagonist. Well, that's not a spoiler. That shouldn't be a spoiler. A spoiler is, oh, Prince Adam gets killed by Skeletor. That's a spoiler. Orko dies. That's a spoiler. Tila being the main protagonist, a spoiler, huh? Which means they should not have known. The world should not have known that Tila was the main protagonist. They had to keep that secret. It's amazing how much they were trying to keep that secret while totally dumping on the idea of keeping secrets. Like, keeping secrets is Tila's beef. She hates it so much, and she's mad at the whole world. She doesn't even. I was listening to MJ Tanner. They're twins, and they're very entertaining. Their commentary is very, very entertaining. I'm not. I was consuming. Admittedly, I really shouldn't even bother with it, but I do want to talk about it. More of a writing thing than anything. Maybe on my next stream. But yeah, they were saying that Tila, her biggest problem, her biggest beef was the secret, so much so that she wouldn't even save the universe because she was upset. It's like, what sadist are you? Like, you won't even save the universe for yourself because you're so angry? I mean, that's suicidal. Like, that's the hero. She's suicidal. She doesn't care about the world. She doesn't care about the universe. And why? So why did that have to be kept secret? Like, tell us what it's about. But they won't. You know why? Because they need the viewings. If they were direct, told you exactly what it was about, they wouldn't even get half their numbers. Because people would just say no. So many people said we were here for He-Man. And He-Man appeared, apparently, according to MJ Tanner. Oh, this is my pet peeve in literature and movies. He-Man appeared in flashbacks. Oh gosh. So any of that promotional stuff that had He-Man and Skeletor, those scenes were flashbacks. That's awful. That is terrible. Anyway. I'm not used to smiling so much, guys. My cheeks hurt. We're watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Prof and me. And I love May. She's kinda like the she's no nonsense, right? And she's putting up a front, as, like, this kind of elitist kinda, really wealthy, well-to-do woman who smiles and cackles all the time, and she goes to Phil Coulson just like, "My face hurts." Alright. Let's continue on with the chat. Oh, listener says, "I don't even watch anything related to the MCU." Neither do I. Disney Star Wars? Neither do I. Or even DCEU. I'm not sure I even want to check out the new Doom movie because it's current year Hollywood. I have absolutely no interest in seeing that film, which is really sad because Dune is a seminal piece of science fiction, and we have the budget and we have the visuals to do such a story like that, and I have no interest at all. Elijah Brown says, "You dyed your hair blonde?" Well, actually, I am blonde. I know it's a darker blonde. Actually, it's pretty yellow in the sun. Um, but I think when I was younger, I actually dyed it platinum blonde. So yes, I probably did look like a bit of a ditz. Yeah, I have natural blonde hair, but it looks dark here. Um, you can see a little bit of it, but it's not like sunlight. Actually, since I moved to the South, my hair has been a lot yellower, um, or more yellow. I think yellower is a word, but I'll say more yellow. When I lived in the Northwest, when it was raining all the time, it was kind of like a really kind of musty, mousy, brownish blonde. But in the South, it's gotten really yellow because it's sunny all the time. Like it was never sunny in my childhood. I grew up in Seattle or around that area. Looks like you guys are chatting amongst yourselves. Owen Lister says, "My take on raising standards, don't even watch anything from these companies just to give it a review, go cold turkey." Yeah, actually, I used that phrase on a comment on a Prof's video just the other day. Is like really the best thing to do is to go cold turkey. Now I think most of the community here we're just not giving it the time of day. Um, I would say I know people mean well. People like Thor Skywalker. I love him. He's great. He's very diplomatic. He's very decent. He's a very positive guy. People like MJ Tanner that I've just gotten to know. Those two twins. They're very objective in their criticism. They're great. They're very highly analytical and they're really entertaining. But it's people like those, and I know they mean well. Um, or maybe they just want views. I don't know, but I don't think that's the case. I think they are decent people. Um, they say things like, we wanna give them a chance, but we don't know." It's like, they don't deserve the chance. They don't deserve the chance. Now with someone like MJ Tanner analyzing, all the episodes of the Revelation, I'm finding it pretty helpful. It's not too far gone where the information is useless because of their content, because of their commentary. I realized that Tila has outrayed Rey. She's outrayed Rey Skywalker. And I'm probably gonna talk about this on another stream, not as a main topic probably, but just as a as the next as the progression of writing Mary Sue's. What it is looking like. And it kind of made me think, earlier today while I was washing up, I was thinking, people are saying, "We're trying to make Tila," like, are they really trying to make Tila a likable character? She's so dislikable. She's so unlikable. Not dislikable, unlikable. She's so unlikable. She's so hard. She's just we loathe her. And I was starting to think, I was like, I don't think this is an accident. I think people are really trying to make unlikable confrontational characters as their protagonists on purpose. I don't suspect they want people to like their characters. I know that sounds strange, but why did they do it otherwise? if they don't want to do it. Yeah, Owen Lister, I heard a lot of the anime franchises are just not doing well on Netflix either. I won't be giving my time to cheap imitation. I'll stick with the real anime. That's right. You got to stick with the real stuff. Dr. Weiss says I'm keeping an eye on that window. Yeah, you see it right there. It's got we got to clean it out. It's got it's a fire escape, and if you open the blinds, it's all these like egg sacs and brown spiders. I think they're recluses or something like that. I'm not sure. But so we got to clean that out. But they're not going anywhere. They're not coming into my bedroom or anything. Yeah, you raise a good point, Owen. I post my art on Minds and MeWe, but I just seem to get more attention on Twitter and Facebook. So until I start getting more attention on my alternative platforms, I'll still use Facebook and Twitter. Yeah, I didn't, people asked me if I had a MeWe account, and I was like, I don't, because MeWe is supposed to be the alternative to Facebook, and I didn't really need Facebook to begin with, so I don't need MeWe. But especially if you want your art to be prolific, there was one point where Twitter, I thought, was not doing it for me because I was getting no reception. And then, like, a few weeks ago, I posted something and it got like 4 retweets and, 20 likes or whatever. It's like, whoa, that's actually really good for my numbers. So it's just, I'm just keeping it. Twitter's like the last, before I would give up any social media, Twitter, then YouTube would be the last thing before I would quit altogether, but I don't think I'm quitting YouTube. YouTube has to quit me. I think I'm staying here for a while. I am getting a little low on energy though, so we'll just kind of wrap it up with the chat here. Horizon Talker says, part of the problem of Minds is they let anyone essentially take out advertising space in their featured posts. The most extreme people are the most willing to spend money on it. I was like, oh gosh. That's probably why I'm seeing all that. I mean, there are things I just block. It's like, I don't want to see this. I don't need to see this. So I'm not going to see it. I'm going to block it. Oh, bye, Melissa. Oh, yeah, it was 20 minutes ago. Good to see you again. I'm glad you could stay on stream. Andres, welcome. Hernandez says, Halloween plans? Yeah. Prof and I are gonna do all sorts of fun stuff. We'll do the traditional trick-or-treating with family, but like indoors, we're gonna be playing Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo on Super Nintendo. Probably catching up on the Universal Monsters, and yes, I am watching with him. Ernest Scared is what's it called? Ernest Scared Stupid, because I love my prof. It's Keely Chow. Nice to see you, man, or woman. I don't know what you are really. That's a good one. Do you consider Masters of the Universe Revelation to be a horror film? In a different way, yeah. A listener says, here's a good goal for raising standards. Just say no to more remakes, reboots, and adaptations. Sequels are all right, but we need more original content. Yeah. People just don't do original content anymore because it's so risky. Ooh. Prof has some fighting words. 80s rotoscoping animation of original He-Man is greater than Motu Revelations animation. I mean, I bet the anime. I didn't give it the time of day, so I haven't seen the show. But I bet the animation looks really, really good. But I can't get behind so much of that, so I don't watch it. Don't watch it. Oh, does it? Is my volume lower? I don't know. All right. Well, this is kind of like a trial run, I would say. MCU favorite list so far. I'm just watching the last MCU movie we saw was Guardians of the Galaxy, and we're just kind of watching Agents of Shield. We might, I don't know, I might probably in the next couple of weeks. I don't know, maybe in October we'll watch the second Guardians of the Galaxy. Dr. West says, I don't like Pee-wee. It's too aggravating to use and too secure. I didn't care for the look of it, but I guess that's just not getting used to it. Best girlfriend ever. Is that how you spell stupid? Oh man, that's dissuading me even more, but it's not. All right, yeah, I probably should go too. I'm kind of running out of steam on my stream. So anyway, so what to look for is just it's September's gonna be an iffy month as far as content, but I hope to get a video out at least once a week. Maybe a little bit on my work in progress. Ray Bradbury, actually, no, a piece for him. So I might get something out, if not Thursday, probably Friday or Saturday, and then maybe some more content this coming Monday. Just maybe a snippet of the stream or something like that. We'll get back to the regular. We'll get back to the regular stuff like the series. I want to do more score analysis, for video game soundtracks like Donkey Kong. I have 2 more for my series on the first game, and I need to do the other series. I need just to do video game soundtracks in general, and then also my hero series. I'd like to do my hero series. So we'll just kind of be patient there. It's all just it'll come. It'll definitely come. So anyway, I think that's everything from me. Until I see you next, I hope you continue pursuing and producing the art you love and upholding the art you love and ignoring the art you don't love. And until I see you next, have a great week. Bye-bye.